welcome to, and I'm just going to go ahead and kind of mute you guys. That way we don't, sometimes we get people on here. It happened last time. Somebody decided to do a phone call while we had this meeting. So if you could just mute yourselves, that'd be great. And yeah, we'll get started here. So welcome to Google My Business Bootcamp. My name's Andy King. I own a company called Pinpoint Marketing. We've been in business for about 11 years now, 10 years. Just some housekeeping things. After each section, we'll have an opportunity for questions. We're going to do one 10-minute break because this is going to go for about 90 minutes. All right. And then if you guys want, I can take the recording and I can put it up on YouTube. If you want to listen to it again, I can certainly do that. That's no problem. And if you want the slides, just reach out to me and email me. My email is andy@pinpointmarketingsolutions.com. It's pinpointmarketingsolutions.com. So, and then also after this meeting, 12 o'clock, we are at Topgolf till 5. So it doesn't cost anything. We have 3 bays there that we rent every Friday. It's a lot of opportunity, a lot of fun for everybody to just go ahead and kind of be there and just network. It's not even really so much about hitting golf balls, but please join us. And then last thing, if I can just get your permission after I do my presentation, I'm going to do a 2-minute pitch on pricing. You guys okay with that? Just nod your head if you're okay. I'll promise you I won't go any longer than 2 minutes. Okay, good deal. Thanks. All right, so Pinpoint Marketing, I mentioned we've been in business about 10 years. We do a lot of different stuff. We're a pretty comprehensive marketing agency, everything from web design to landing pages, brochures, graphic design, logos. We pretty much do most of everything within marketing. And the thing that we really highlight and try to do really well is to really pinpoint, thus the name, exactly what works and what doesn't work. And today I'm going to be talking about a lot of stuff that works really, really well on the internet. And I'm also going to preface it on the stuff that isn't working and a lot of the fallacies out there, because there's a lot of people out there that are saying some crazy stuff that isn't going to help you. And that's the stuff that you need to avoid. Okay. All right. So let me just say this. Profitable marketing happens when you use the right strategy at the right time in the right way. And what I mean by that is a lot of things have worked on the internet in years past, but they don't work now. One of those things that works really well is Google My Business. And that's mainly going to be where most of our focus is today. So just a quick history lesson. Anybody know what took place in 1620? Trivia question. 1620, think early American history. Okay. Usually I play the Jeopardy theme, when I do this in person. But in 1620, the Mayflower came over from England to the United States. Now I talk about the Mayflower because I think it's such a good analogy, representation of what it's like to own your own business, be an entrepreneur, or a salesperson. Because sales is pretty much the same thing, especially if you're on commission. When you have your own business and you're an entrepreneur, you want to make sure that you have enough money when you start your business that you can get going and you can get enough stuff in your pipeline to where you don't run out of money before other money starts coming in. And that's exactly what took place on the Mayflower. They had to make sure they had enough supplies to be able to not only make it across the ocean for a 2-month voyage, but had enough stuff to be able to go in and to wherever they're going to land, be able to plant for that next growing season. So very, very tough when you're a business owner, and it's very tough coming across on the Mayflower. So this is a good-looking businesswoman. This is how pretty much we all are, right? With our business back and behind, it looks like she has like this really awesome kind of boutique kind of coffee shop. That's how we all feel, right? Or is this a little bit more accurate on a daily basis? Is it maybe sometimes it's more like a train wreck, right? That's how I feel a lot of the time too. So believe me. So in 1991, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, and I'm going to share with you my why and why I am as passionate as I am about what I do. So in 1991, I was in business school. So I had a marketing class, I had a small business class, and I had an entrepreneur class. And I thought I was ready to get out in the world, make millions of dollars. I inherited $10,000, and I went out and I bought $10,000 worth of used shoes. Now, these were shoes that were previously sold at Macy's, Neiman Marcus, Bloomingdale's, really nice high-end shoes. But all of these department stores have return policies that are absolutely phenomenal, meaning like you can wear them for 2 weeks, and if you just don't even like them, you can take them back. I mean, you can wear them some of these places like for a year, take them back, and they'll give you your money back. Well, sometimes these shoes were lightly used, and they didn't just throw them away, and certainly the department stores couldn't sell them. So what they would do is they would sell those shoes to people like me. And so they, I went in there and I bought $10,000 worth of shoes. And what I would get is like a $250 pair of Cole Haans, and I'd pay $5 for them. And then I would turn around and I would sell them for $50, $60, $75. So it was a pretty good markup. My sales model was this. I went door to door, knocking on doors, mostly finding women at home. And I would tell them about all these great deals of shoes that I had and how they could get like a, $175 pair of shoes for like $30. And they would be like, wow, that's amazing, Andy. We'd love to check those out. How can we look at them? And I said, well, come out to my office, come out to my van. I had all of my used shoes in a VW bus. And so my business model was going door to door, convincing mainly women to come out to my van so I could show them shoes. And despite that being a little kind of weird and strange, I started to have success. In fact, at one point, I thought I was going to transform how shoes were sold to women. And what I was going to do and how I was going to do that was going out there and have VW buses, vans going around with used shoes all day long, knocking on doors and convincing women to come out to their van. In fact, I was so sure that was going to happen because Ralph Lauren started selling ties out of the trunk of his car in New York City. That's how he got his start. So I started to have success and I started to make some money, but then I had a hiccup and I called it the movie, and it was called Silence of the Lambs. It came out in 1991, and it's about a guy that invites women out to his van, and he's not trying to sell them used shoes. He's trying to do something else with them. But despite that, despite the movie, I was still making about $50 an hour, and I was doing incredibly well. But what I noticed is when I wasn't selling, I wasn't fishing, I wasn't knocking doors, I wasn't making any money. And I call that, this cycle, the roller coaster ride of inconsistently consistent sales revenues, meaning that you're so inconsistent with your sales revenues, it becomes consistent. And it's an up and down. One month you bring in 10,000, the next month you only bring in 2,000. Next month you bring in 8,000, next month you only bring in $500. It's kind of like how business is sometimes. And this is the most deadly thing to businesses. Inconsistent sales revenues has so many problems that come with it, and mainly because you just can't plan on anything. You can't figure out what are your next steps. Can I lease a building? Can I buy a vehicle for my business? You just can't plan. So you want to get away from that. So shortly after starting my business, about 6 months later, I was living in my van with my used shoes down by the river. And if you've ever seen the early Saturday Night Lives, there's a whole skit about a motivational speaker, and he just talks about the fact that he lives in a van down by the river. So it's kind of a fun thing. I actually have written a book about this experience and talk about, what not to do. As I was living in my van with my used shoes down by the river, I started to do some introspection. I started to think of what I should have done and what I wasn't doing. And one thing I realized is that I had blind spots. And not just a traditional blind spot, because when we're driving down the road, we know that we have a blind spot. We know that we need to look in the rearview mirror on the left and on the right to be able to see if there's a car, if we're going to change lanes. We're aware of that. This kind of blind spot is you don't know what you don't know, and you don't even know that you don't know it. And I know that sounds like that's a lot of words, but it's essentially saying that you've got a blind spot that's going on and you're not even aware of that blind spot. And I saw a whole lot of those. And so I blame a lot of this on popular culture. There's a movie called Field of Dreams. Anybody ever seen that movie? Anybody know what the big saying in that movie is? Go ahead and unmic yourself if you know it. Just tell me what it is. It's if you build it,
it will come.
Yeah, and it's really such an interesting thing because throughout the whole movie, it's all really about creating something that they're going to actually market and they're going to make money. But the whole process of it is that, yeah, if you just build this, people are going to show up. The problem is that so many people that have gone into business, and I've literally had customers over a 10-year period of time. You can imagine I've heard probably just about most of everything that, what a business, owner thinks and, what they say. I've literally had customers actually say that. I say, look, Andy, I don't really see the need for marketing because, bottom line is our product is so good. And, people, if we just continue to make it, they will continue to buy it. And it's absurd because it doesn't work that way. In fact, there's other urban myths. The one being that you open up a restaurant, if you just have really good food, the lines are going to be around the block. Look, I'm not saying that this can't happen, that you can't come up with something that's just so amazing that the world finds it, but those are outliers. Those generally don't happen. Unfortunately, and this is the reality, it isn't the best product that sells the most. It's the product that's marketed the best that sells the most. And you can see that with all case studies. In fact, those of us that are old school, if you remember the Beta versus VHS, Beta was the more superior product, but VHS won out. In fact, Beta was actually even smaller than the VHS tapes, but VHS won out, and that was the inferior product because the marketing was better. And there's countless other examples like that. So as I was continuing to do my introspection, as I was living in my van down by the river, I came across a quote by Will Rogers. And I really like Will Rogers because he would say it how it really is. And this quote that I came across, he says, there's three kinds of men. There's those that learn by reading, those that learn by observation, and then the third one has to pee on the electric fence to find out for themselves. Me selling used shoes out of a VW bus was my peeing on electric fence, and it did not feel good because I approached it all incorrectly. I did not market, and I did not market well. So I wanted to learn. I came to the conclusion that I wanted to do better, and so I did that. So I started reading. I got a hold of every business book I could, marketing book, sales book, and I read probably over the course of probably 10, 15 years, probably close to 200 business books, marketing books, and sales books. And then I started to go work for businesses that really knew what they were doing. One of those businesses was McDonald's, and they have everything systematized. Hey, we may not like the food. My kids love the food. I'm not that big of a fan anymore because I'm kind of getting older and it's not the healthiest thing in the world. But McDonald's is so organized. Every single franchise will model their business off of McDonald's and how they do it. And then I got myself some mentors. And so I started to listen to people that were a whole lot smarter than me. And boy, did they teach me a lot of stuff. So this is what I learned. And I kind of covered this. Profitable marketing happens when you use the right strategy at the right time and in the right way. And essentially, this is my why. My why is to help business owners discover these blind spots that they're not even aware of. You don't know what you don't know, and often you don't even know that you don't know it, okay? We want to avoid a train wreck, a complete catastrophe. You do not want to live in your van with your U-shoes down by the river. And I say that metaphorically, but when we go out of business, it's very painful to have that happen, okay? So I mentioned I wrote a book. I took all this theory, put it into practice. It's called Stop Selling U-Shoes Out of VW Bus, 3 Simple Steps to Profitable and Sustainable Marketing. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to talk about some of those strategies that are extremely profitable and extremely sustainable, okay? So let's do this. We're going to talk about being found on the internet, and we're going to talk a lot about Google My Business, but we have to talk about SEO, because anytime we talk about being on the internet, it's always about SEO. It's always about search engine optimization. And for those of you that don't know what SEO is, SEO stands for search engine optimization. It's the process of getting traffic, people clicking on your website, coming and finding you from free organic editorial or natural search results on search engines, okay? It's a very technical term. It wasn't even around 20 years ago, okay? It's fairly new, and there's just a lot of misinformation about it. So SEO, first impressions, and I'm gonna give you my first impressions of SEO. And it took place 12 years ago, and it was with a company called Overstock.com. So everybody's heard of Overstock.com. And I don't know if you guys realize this, but at one point, Overstock.com was actually bigger than Amazon, and they were bigger than eBay. Well, I knew those guys that started Overstock.com, not while they were doing Overstock.com. I knew them after the initial co-founders actually sold it. They made millions of dollars, and they became what we used to talk a lot about was super affiliates on the internet. A super affiliate is somebody that builds all these websites, that drives all of this traffic to their website with a link that takes the consumer to another site where they end up buying something. These guys that I knew were super affiliates and had agreements with NordicTrack treadmills. And they made a lot of money doing this. And so what they would do is they would build a website that looked like Consumer Reports. Everybody remember Consumer Reports, a magazine? If you're going to buy a car, you flip through it and you read all these ratings from the consumer. They would build a website that would look, it was completely unbiased, right? It looked like it would have 5, 6 different kinds of treadmills. Of course, the one that they had an agreement with, that if consumers clicked on and it took them to the NordicTrack treadmill, was the one that actually had the most amount of stars and the best reviews. So it's kind of dishonest just to begin with, because you make it look like you're completely unbiased when it wasn't. So what they would do is they would have a boiler room full of about 25 college students. And these college students, all they would do and do all day long is build backlinks, post on social media, subscribe to other directories where they could be found, and just build all of this effort into getting this website to pop up being number one. That if you wanted to find a good treadmill, the search term would be best treadmill for home, or treadmill, good treadmill, whatever it is. However we searched, look for it, and then their website would come up, and then boom. So these guys were really successful at this. At points, they would be pushing as many as 1,000 of those treadmills a month, in which they got $200 kickback from NordicTrack. So these guys were making about $200,000 a month, except about every 3 months, their sales would completely fall off the cliff. I mean, they would go from 1,000 to the next month, it would be 0, like that roller coaster ride I was telling you about, right? But what would happen is Google would flag them, and they would start penalizing them for all this crazy stuff that they were doing. It wasn't natural. It wasn't organic. It worked for a little bit, but after Google would change their algorithm, they would fall off the cliff, and then nobody would ever see that site. So they would scrub it, and they would start all over again. Eventually, these guys gave up, and they gave up because it just didn't make sense. I mean, look, these guys were worth millions of dollars. Why waste our time building something that we know within 3 months it's just going to be a disaster, even though we get it to the point where we can make a couple $100,000? It just isn't worth their time at that point. So what was happening? And I kind of mentioned about Google changing their algorithm. And this is what was happening. Google was evolving, and Google's always been evolving. It's always changing their algorithm. And very particularly, and this is what's been happening over the last probably 7 to 10 years, is Google is shifting from technical SEO and link building. Like all the time I hear SEO guys talk about, oh, you got to get these links, you got to do this, you got to do that. But very little of that makes much difference right now, because Google has moved to organic and content-driven search algorithm. And that's important to keep in mind. It's content is king. It's all about getting content up. And I say that because Google has an army of PhDs, and they're simply not going to be, you're not going to outthink them. They have the smartest people on the face of the earth when it comes to this kind of stuff. And you might find a loophole for a little bit, but eventually they're going to come in and they're going to plug it in. So really, what to do? And here's the first thing I'm going to tell you. This is the person you need to avoid. This is the guy. It's usually a millennial. And before I start bashing on the millennials, I have millennials that work for me. Some of them are really good people. But this guy is going around with the Rolex watch. He's going to tell you how awesome and great he is at what he does, that he's going to make you all this money. And he knows how the algorithm works. And the reality is he's probably only been doing SEO for maybe 1 or 2 years. He has no perspective. There's no historical background to anything that he knows about. Don't understand. So I don't want to hit this too hard, but I'm just going to say these last few things. This is how you identify an SEO hack. They tell you they're going to give you #1 in Google. Nobody knows how to do that. I mean, you just don't know how to do that. SEO guys doesn't know how to do that because you don't know about the other 5 companies that are probably outspending you 2 to 3 times as much money. There's no way of knowing. They can't promise you that. Constantly talking about Google's algorithm. They don't know. Nobody knows. Little transparency won't tell you specifics to what we're doing. They'll tell you, hey, yeah, I can't tell you what we're doing because it's a secret. They can get you tons of backlinks and directory listings. It doesn't matter right now. Backlinks and directory listings are not as heavily weighted as they used to be. In fact, they're very lightly weighted at this point. Know someone at Google and know what they're doing. That's the last one. Even though I'm going to tell you a lot of things that actually work, I'll be the first one to tell you I don't know everything to it because it's impossible because there's too many pieces that are missing. This is one of them. This is a SEO markup code for years that Google partners. You can go in and you can get this certification from Google where Google tells you and teaches you all this stuff. You get certified. This piece of markup, relevant equals previous / next, was all about sticking into a blog where people would comment and then it would go from one page to the next with all the comments. Well, this piece of code would tell Google that this, even though you're going from one page to the next, that it's all basically one big long page. For 3 or 4 years, Google was telling their Google partners that that markup worked, except after about 3 or 4 years of telling them, Google came back and came clean and said, nope, that actually hasn't been working for 3 or 4 years. It is not in Google's interest to tell you exactly what works because they want everything to be organic, if that makes sense. So even somebody that has all this certification and tells you how awesome they are and they know all this stuff, they still don't know anything because if Google's going to lie to you and they're going to mislead you, there's nothing you can do about that. Okay, so avoid that guy. He's going to want to tell you how awesome he is. Okay, they're going to oversimplify things, and ultimately it's going to lead to a train wreck or living in a van with your U-shoes down by the river. Don't do that. Okay, all right, 3 components that we're going to cover today. We're going to talk a little bit about websites, and then we're going to go straight into Google My Business. Okay. I just have to mention a couple things on SEO. These are the 5 big things. I'm not going to go into much detail. If you want to know more about it, you can get with me one-on-one. But ultimately, every website should have their title tags done, their meta descriptions done, their headline tags, and then content, meaning that pictures and words, huge, and then image optimization. Don't put big images on there because it slows the website down. And that is the biggest ding that people get for their websites. If you've got big images, they need to be reduced. They need to be so that they're not so big. Okay? Most important aspects to websites beyond the SEO factor is that with your website, you want to look as much like a franchise as you possibly can. Now, there's a lot of studies that have been done on this, but the closer you are to looking like you're a franchise, the more credibility that you have. I went through McDonald's. I like McDonald's because my kids love it. I go through McDonald's drive-through. They give me 4 sundaes. They were half filled. I didn't even say anything to the person that was there at the drive-through window. I just called the phone number, and suddenly McDonald's is mailing me free Sunday vouchers. They're mailing me coupons for Big Macs, French fries, drinks, everything. They are sending me so much stuff because that is McDonald's. That's a franchise. They're nationally known. The more that you look like that's what you are, even though you're a small man shop, and there's nothing wrong. than just being a single operator within your business. But if your website looks awesome, it develops credibility. Now I'm going to show you how consumers are going to find you on your website, how they're going to find you to your website, I should say, and how that's going to happen here a little bit later. But the better your website looks aesthetically, the cleaner it is, well designed, the more credible you look. It's very hard because unless consumers actually know you, they have no measure to measure you by other than how good your website look. It makes a difference how your website looks, and it's very important. So as I mentioned, franchise, McDonald's, let me give you some examples, okay? So I'm going to take you and I'm going to show you some stuff here, okay? This is a website for one of our clients. A lot of you guys already know Mike Mogel. He's actually in my BNI chapters. A few of you guys on here that are part of BNI, but maybe some of you that are not. But I have a networking meeting with him once a week, and this is his website. And if I go ahead, I'm just going to refresh it so you can see all the really cool automations to it. It's really clean. He's just a one-man shop with 5, 6, 7 people that do cleaning for him. It's not like he's a franchise, but boy, he certainly looks at it when you go from page to page with how it's laid out, how clean it is. The images are good. His buttons are really great. You click on them, they work. They actually take you. Here he is with his crew. He even has a link here to join the team. So all sorts of good stuff. His information, contact form, super clean, super nice. Here's another example. Many of you know Brian Gessner with Prestige. This is his website that we just finished just a couple weeks ago. Same thing, very clean, very simple. He has testimonials on his website, a lot of good information, contact form, get in touch. It's very easy to reach out to him, view services. You click on this, it'll take you to a page and it shows his main services: HVAC repair, HVAC installation, HVAC maintenance, okay? It's consistent all the way through, and I'm not gonna go in there and go through all the pages, but we use very good layouts that we go in and we do a ton of customization. That's why these websites look so good. We don't go out there, we don't try to reinvent the wheel. That's the worst thing that you can ever have a web developer do, is try to design something from scratch, because it's gonna be a train wreck. Okay, but those are good examples. All right, questions? Anybody have any questions on any of this? Okay, so look, we're having some pretty good time here. Does anybody need a break? Because I don't need it. I'll just keep going through and maybe we'll finish up a little bit earlier. Okay, if you need to take a break, just go ahead. I'm just going to skip it for right now. Call it audible here. Okay, so just in summation, when we talk about websites, you want to look like a franchise. You may not be a franchise, but you want it to look like you are, because that is all, it's all about credibility. The consumer, if they've never spoken to you and they found you online, the only measure that they have to measure you with is how good your website looks, okay? Google My Business, okay? Google My Business, this is the one thing that if you only take one thing away out of everything that I cover here today, is that Google My Business is everything that the Yellow Pages was 40 years ago. If you were in business 40 years ago, it was almost automatic that you needed to be in the Yellow Pages, okay? Yellow Pages are no longer around because we have the internet, but Google My Business is becoming everything that Yellow Pages was 40 years ago, okay? So before I'm going to get into really talking about Google My Business, let me show you some perspective. And this is why I talk about search engine optimization and talk about the internet, okay? The internet doesn't look like this anymore. We just stepped into the Wayback Machine. This is a 2008 search. And what's interesting in this search, if you notice this, where it says optimize web performance, website load testing, there's no little AD next to it, which stands for ad. This is previous to the FTC and the FCC coming down and saying, look, Google, you got to put an ad next to an ad when it is an ad. Below those three are all organic searches. And you guys remember this on the right side, when there used to be ads, there's no more ads anymore on the right side. It's usually, there's only 3, if that, nowadays, because things have dramatically changed. And when I say they've dramatically changed, let me show you this, okay? When we go in and we go to Google, and let's just talk about restaurants. I want to eat Chinese food. I type in Chinese food near me. This is what pops up, right? It's the map, and this is what I refer to as the 3-pack, all right? Notice that there's nothing above. There's no ads anymore. Sometimes there are, but most of the time, this is what's happening. In fact, Entrepreneur Magazine came out with an article last week talking about, and they literally said this, that SEO as we knew it is dead because how Google's laying out their page. Each one of these 3 citations here are Google My Business pages. These are the Google My pages for these 3 restaurants. Imperial Garden is a restaurant. It's just right around the corner, right on the other side of Home Depot. We eat there about once a week as an office. I go down, I get some takeout. It's good food, right? So this is what happens when we click on their Google My Business page. There it pops up. They've got a bunch of reviews and a bunch of information that they can have on their Google My Business page. This is also the thing that we generally do when we are on our cell phones, right? We just hit it, we click it, and now we've got directions. Google owns this space, and it's huge to understand this because this is the most important thing that you can do on the internet today. So when I go back there, I can type in just simply restaurant near me, and you're always going to see, generally speaking, even when we type in restaurant, it almost pre-fills the near me in there because Google knows that's generally what the consumer's doing. Now we can look at some other restaurants, okay? That's the same thing. Now I'm going to show you a couple of our customers right here. We have a customer that called Flooring Nerd, all right? Now, so you understand, I'm in an incognito window. This is a true search. I typed in Flooring Nerd. There is their Google My Business page right there, okay? Now I've typed in, and I did these just about 10 minutes before we started. This is Flooring the Woodlands. Here the Flooring Nerd is in the 2nd position in the 3-pack, okay? These guys were getting 4 to 6 appointments in home. They go into people's homes during the months of April and May when COVID was at its peak. I had 2 other flooring companies that I was talking to. One of them I was actually working with, and they were dying. These were companies that I had, one of them I just was starting to work with. The other one was trying to determine whether or not to work with us. Flooring Nerd, I've been working with them for a couple years. But because we were building up their Google My Business page, they show up on the 3-pack. Now, if I go in and I search for just wood flooring, the Woodlands, they're in the 3rd position in the 3-pack, all right? I type in vinyl flooring, the Woodlands, they're in the 2nd position. And if I go in and I type in carpet, Woodlands, they don't show up. So for that search term, they're not showing up. So we're working on some stuff to get more information about carpet and how they do carpet installation and all those things so that they eventually show up, all right? So with that being said, it's super duper important. All internet searches are local. Back in 1998, if you typed in flooring company here in Texas, most likely you would find a flooring company that was in California or New York or another part of the United States. That will never happen today, okay? That was back when the internet was new. All searches are local. I mean, whether it's you're on your computer or your phone, Google knows where you're at. Google knows where you're at to the extent that you have apps now that you can actually be in a store and you can actually look at shelving and the app will actually start sending you out messages, push notifications about specials on the actual aisle you're looking at. It's kind of creepy, scary, but that's where we're at nowadays. That's the power that the consumer has, or should I say that's the power that Google has or big tech has, that they know exactly what we're all doing. But you can benefit from this when you get your Google My Business optimized. I gave you the Chinese example, restaurant example. This is 2008. Once again, look at the difference of that compared to that. It is completely different. I say it all the time. We go back to this guy right here. Mr. SEO Marketer 2008 wants their internet strategy, SEO strategy back. Please give it to them, because that's what they're doing when they're pushing you on all this stuff that needs to be done on your website. It doesn't. Your focus, 70 to 80% of your focus needs to be on Google My Business. That's the point I'm making. But with that being said, when I go back and I go to Flooring Nerd, this is their page right here, I can click on their website through their Google My Business. And when we go in there and we look at the analytics for Google My Business pages, this is very, very important stuff, that you have a website set up correctly and that you see what the ratio is of how many people, once they find you, what the search term was, where they found you, as well as how many of them actually called you, how many people wanted directions, how many people clicked through the website. All of those numbers, all of that data is in the back end of your Google My Business page. And it's absolutely profound. It is better than anything that Google's ever had, because it's all about you and about your business. So just to show you all the information that you can have, you can see this section right here. It's all about the reviews, okay? This section right here is about the products. So if I click on this, this is all unique to Google My Business. No place else is all of this content at. They'll have content that mirrors it up on their website, but all this is unique. There's over 40 of them there. And each one of them, when I click on it, has a picture and a little bit of a blurb. You can put up as many products as you possibly can. And it is absolutely, totally powerful. The next thing that we do this work for them. I'll be, straightforward with you on that. This is a posting that we've just put up for them 23 hours ago. And the next hour, they're going to have the posting that goes up today. We put up an actual mini blog, is what we call these, different from the product section. But every day they get a piece of content that goes up on their Google My Business page. It is a combination of all of these mini blogs, the products that we keep putting up for them, and all of these reviews that they get up, that makes it so that they're found in the 3-pack for many, many search terms. That's what's making the difference. Any questions on any of that? Okay. Now they're a construction company, but let me show you this. Robin Abrams, she's a person that's in one of my networking groups. She's just an insurance agent. Google My Business is so good about even allowing individuals to have their own Google My Business page. It's in her name. She actually works for US Health. Okay, they have a lot of agents, but now she has her own Google My Business page. She didn't really even have a business. Realtors can have this. This is so powerful, especially for realtors, because they can have their name in a Google My Business page. They can start accumulating reviews. They can have products go up. They can have the mini blogs go up. And then if they have to leave that brokerage, if they go to Keller Williams, to Gary Green, guess what? Their Google My Business page goes with them. It's not an extension of Keller Williams. Does that make sense? It's absolutely powerful. So when we Google Robin Abrams Insurance, she pops up and you've got a lot of good information. Eventually, she's going to have a landing page that we're also building for her as well, that when she clicks on that, it's going to go over. Right now, I believe it's just going to her Facebook page. But it's not just for big companies anymore. It's not for, companies just like Flooring Nerd, where he's got 4 or 5 people at work in him. This individual is just by herself. It's for individuals. And that's powerful, because most of us don't even know that. So with that being said, if there's no questions, I'm going to move on. If you guys at this point, nobody's asked any questions, sometimes I'm worried that you're going to ask questions in the middle of the presentation. But if you do, at this point, just ask them. No worry about interrupting me. Online reviews, okay? So this is the third part. So we talked about websites. We talked about Google My Business. Now we're going to talk about online reviews and how important online reviews. There are so many different platforms, channels, if you want to call them that, where an online review can be posted. And it's so absolutely powerful on what you can do with online reviews. There's two components. There's an SEO aspect to it. There's also social proof. But when we're going in there, and let's do a search term. Let's do general contractor near me. Okay. If I'm in here and I'm looking at the 3-pack, I want to see, well, none of these guys have any kind of reviews. So this wasn't a good example, at least not in the 3-pack. But if I go in here, I'm looking to see who has the most number of reviews with the highest star rating. Does that make sense? The person that has the best star rating with the most number of reviews wins, and they win every time. And the person or the company to blame for all of this when it comes to reviews is Amazon. Amazon's been doing that for the better part for close to like 10, 15 years. In fact, I used to have an employee that worked for me who was actually doing the reviews that we do for our customers, who was part of Amazon's program where as a seller, if I was a seller of Amazon and I was selling, say, just like cables, for, lightning cable for my iPhone, I could send people a lightning cable, they could try it out, and they could write a review. That's how important that Amazon actually put that whole program together. Except about 3-4 years ago, they shut it down. And the reason they shut it down because they ended up deeming it as unethical, because you're basically bribing somebody with a product to give them a good review, right? But that's how important it was for many, many years. Nobody goes on Amazon, or at least I don't know of anybody, and buy something and not read at least a couple of reviews. Maybe if it's only like $5, you're not worried about it. $10, no big deal. But if it's in the hundreds of dollars, especially the thousands of dollars, if I'm going to buy something for thousands of dollars, I'm going through and I'm reading like 20, 30, 40 reviews, because it's more important to me what the consumer says about my services, my product, or that person's product or service than what I'm going to say. What you're going to say doesn't carry as much weight as what the consumer says. And that's why ultimately, when we're looking at internet searches, if I want a flooring company, let's say HVAC near me, I can scroll down. There's a couple ads. There's the Google guaranteed thing that they're launching. But as soon as I get here, I'm looking for the person that has the most number of reviews with the higher star rating. And that looks like it's Lone Star Pro Services. And that's probably who I'm going to call. The consumer doesn't care what's below that. They don't care about Yelp being down there, unless you like to go to Yelp. They don't want to go to Home Advisor. If you've ever signed up for Home Advisor, oh my gosh, don't do that, because you will get 25 phone calls that next day of people trying to sell you crap, not just for the service that you signed up for, but also for financing, for insurance, and everything else. But if you scroll down here, the first company that's actually an HVAC company is like halfway down the page. The consumers aren't going there. They're going right here. And the first thing that they're looking for are the reviews. So a couple statistics on reviews. Search engine optimization, okay? There's two parts to reviews. There's an SEO part and there's a social proof part. It's SEO, search engine optimization, helping us being found on Google. The social proof is the fact that it's what the consumer says about the product and service, not what the owner of the business says. 63% of consumers use a search engine like Google to find online reviews. I'm thinking about doing business with you. I'm going to Google you, and I'm going to see what consumers say. 78% of consumers or adults believe it's very important to look up information about a business online before deciding to interact or do business with them, okay? The references are all below the quotes here and where we've gotten these. When consumers want to know how good a business is at what they do, according to Bright Local, 63% of consumers Google the business name to see what is said about them. What about the other group of consumers? What do they do? Well, 30% of the consumers go directly to the online review site and read reviews. Anybody know what they call people that consistently go to Yelp? They have a name for them. Anybody know what that is? Someone that goes to Yelp all the time, They call them Yelpers. They even have a name. There are people out there, believe it or not, that they will only do business with somebody that's on Yelp. And that's where they search for. So it's important to have reviews everywhere. Okay, social proof. 88% of consumers trust online reviews as much as personal recommendations. Absolutely huge. The guys at Flooring Nerd, and it's not just them, we have other customers that have had this happen for them. In fact, I'm going to show you one right now in just a few minutes. Those guys, because we've gotten them so many reviews and they're all 5-star, they literally get phone calls where the consumer actually says, hey, the reason I went with you is because you all your 5-star reviews, because you guys are awesome. And they literally get feedback in regards to that. Absolutely huge. 90% of consumers say buying decisions are influenced by online reviews. It's a third-party sale. You guys can sell pinpoint marketing a whole lot better than Andy King or Holly King from Pinpoint Marketing. You have more credibility. Just as Holly King and Andy King can sell your products and services a whole lot better than you can sell your own, because we are always viewed as a disinterested third party. And that's really, really important to understand. That's why referral networks, network meetings and referrals work so well, because most of the time, if you get past a really, really super good referral, there's almost no selling in it. They've already made the decision they're going to go with you because they trust the individual that referred you. You can get the same type of clout online, and you definitely want reviews. This is a review that we did with one of our clients over 3 years ago. He owns a metal roofing company. And if you look down here, they basically say at the bottom of the review, after seeing Strictly Metal Roofing sign, this was a yard sign that this consumer saw. We went to the BBB website and read all the great 5-star reviews that they have, and it made us feel comfortable and confident in calling them. This is a review, and if you read up earlier here, they're talking about how great it was and what Carl did to save the Super Bowl, you know, because they're having the roof installed at the same time. This is a review after the fact, after they had the roof put up, but they actually talk about how they actually found the guy. They found the guy off of a yard sign, went online, looked at the online reviews on the BBB, and now we have a review that's talking about how great of a job that Carl at Strictly Metal Roofing did for this consumer, in which the consumer talks about how they actually initially found him. It's kind of like a big circle of time going on here. All right? Very powerful, very important to have these kind of reviews. A lot of detail. The worst review that you can get isn't the review saying how horrible of a job or service you did, because you can go in and you can contest that. And we help our customers do that. It's not all that difficult, but you get very detailed, you don't get defensive, and you just lay it out very, very methodically. The worst review you can get is someone that used your service and said, hey, Andy, great man, took care of us, and afterwards we went out for a beer. Worst review, because there's no detail, there's no information. It looks like you got your cousin to put up a review for you, and you don't want that. You want detail about how you solve the problem for the consumer. That makes sense? Okay, real important. Okay, so let's take a look at some reviews here. And I showed you one already. So I'm going to go back to Flooring Nerd because they're doing really well with their reviews, and also they're making really good money. If you look at these reviews, look at the length and look at the depth. This person put up pictures. This is what you want in the form of reviews. Okay, very specific things in the reviews talking about how they show up on time, how they did what they said they were going to do. The guy previously talking about Strictly Metal Roofing, in one of his reviews, it talks about how he walks around the house and picks up nails after he's done each day when they're doing the roofing project, and how people have pets and they appreciate that. I mean, that's amazing that he does that, because most contractors won't. Okay. A lot of different places where you can post reviews. Okay. Any questions on this? Any thoughts? Is this helpful information? It should be, because in years past, the internet was a mystery, meaning like, exactly what do I have to do? I know I got to get a website, but how do I get that website up to #1? All of that is gone. All this stupid technical stuff, the guy trying to tell you you need to change your blinker fluid, or even worse, tells you that your flux capacitor has gone out in your car and it needs to be replaced. And if you're a fan of Back to the Future, it's the flux capacitor that makes time travel possible. There is no such thing. But too much of what's taken place the last 20 years, and I'm pulling back the curtain here because I've seen it for year after year after year, is you have all these people telling you have to do all these crazy, outrageous things and pay all this money for crazy, outrageous strategies that you're like wondering, is this really even going to work? Is this guy even telling me the truth on this? And the reality is, a lot of times they're not. It's unfortunate, but so much of this stuff, all this technical jargon, it's all being thrown out the window, because now it's all becoming about Google My Business. If you have tons of reviews, if you have tons of product postings, and you have lots of mini blog postings is what we call them, and you're continually adding to that page, you will eventually make it into the 3-pack on certain search terms. Not every search term, because nobody's going to own every single search term. But the more you participate, the more Google rewards you. That is the new model. And it's very simple to understand. And that's what we help our customers do. So I'm going to show you some quick pricing here. This is my 2-minute pitch. We have 3 different packages when we do this for customers. We have the competitor, the dominator, the monopolizer. Okay. We do all the same stuff. It's just each price point we're doing, as it goes up, we're doing more and more stuff. We go in there, we post 1 review a month for this package, 3 products per month, 8 mini blogs per month. We create all the content, and then we put up 9 photos every single month. And then, as I said, each subsequent package that goes up in price goes up in terms of how much more work that we do. The nice thing is when we do this for our customers, it's consistent. We're constantly doing it. You can always go in, add your own photos, add your own stuff. But when we get busy as business owners, we generally forget to do this stuff. And it's understandable because you're doing your business. But when you hire a company like us, it's automatic, it's going on in the background. You don't even have to approve the content. If you need to, absolutely. In fact, we're getting ready to do a bunch of work for a law firm, and everything has to go through compliance. No problem at all. We write it ahead of time, we get it approved, and then we start posting. But this is the piece that we have had so much success, not just with Flooring Nerd. We have other companies that we do this for, that they are starting to make lots of money because they're getting found on their Google My Business page. Okay, so if you have any questions, my 2 minutes is up here. I'm not going to spend any more time talking about it. That's my shameless sales pitch. I appreciate for all of you staying on with me and not turning me off. But if that's pretty much everything. I can stay on for the next 30 minutes, answer as many questions as you want. If you want to go into more detail talking about Google My Business, we also do web development. We build a lot of websites. But do you guys have any questions? Any thoughts on that? Okay, so if there's no questions, I'm going to finish up and I'm going to close on out. So I talked a little bit about the Mayflower. Okay, so the Mayflower consisted with 3 different kinds of people, 3 different groups that were on there. They had what was referred to as Puritans, people that were seeking religious freedom. They also had people on there that were indentured servants, people that are essentially slaves that were actually seeking literal freedom. The Puritans were seeking religious freedom. The indentured servants were actually looking for physical freedom, owning themselves. And the third group were fortune seekers, okay? Fortune seekers is what we know today as entrepreneurs, okay? There were those 3 groups of people on there. And all of us that are on this call today, we're all entrepreneurs. We own our own business. So as they came over, their meal consisted of the food that they ate, where it was beer, horse jerky, and oatmeal. That's what they ate to get over to the new world. As they came over, William Bradford was their second governor. And as they came into Plymouth, it was late November. They got caught in some pretty bad storms and they were greatly delayed. Well, as they got here, it was freezing cold as it is up north in November. William Bradford fell off the ship, the stern. And even accounts back then, they weren't quite sure that it was an accident or she just purposely gave up because it was so hard that she just jumped over knowing that she would die from exposure. Okay. William Bradford has the best collection of notes, a journal, 40 years worth. And basically, many historians refer to William Bradford's journal as a love story with his people, because half of everybody that came over on Plymouth died. 50 of the 100 people or so died from that first year, and it was very tough. One of the reasons it was really tough is when they came here, they started to live in what they referred to as a communal, where everything that they grew, they killed animals, they brought it all together, and they started to share it with one another. And it seems like kind of a neat, kind of a cool idea that you want to share. But the problem is they started to starve to death, and it wasn't working. And they would have all sorts of just little insurrections happening, where this person was accusing that person of being lazy. And this person, hey, you washing my shirt in the creek isn't as important as me going out and plowing the field. So as smart as William Bradford was, he says, enough of this nonsense. We're going to parcel up land. You're each going to get a parcel of land, and you're going to be self-reliant. You're going to eat what you grow. You're going to keep what you kill and eat. And it's going to be up to you to support yourself. So they went to a capitalist society, and that's when they started to flourish. That's when things got amazing for them. That's when we know the Thanksgiving story where they invited the Indians. It was because they set up literally an actual entrepreneur way of doing business. This is William Bradford's grave. And he says this right here: what your fathers achieved with great difficulty, do not relinquish without a struggle. Correct processes and systems work, incorrect ones only lead to disaster. A train wreck. Living in a van down by the river. Profitable marketing is using the right strategy, the right time, in the right way. Google My Business is everything for a small, medium-sized business to an individual. That's what you need to focus on when it comes to your online presence. And that's everything. We're finished within 60 minutes. It's the fastest I ever went. Normally it takes 90 minutes. But if you guys have questions, I'm more than happy to stick around. I'll stay on here for the next 30 minutes, but that's it. Thank you for coming.